The trading station orbited the gas giant Xerion Prime like a metal moon, its sprawling corridors filled with beings from across the galaxy. Merchants hawked exotic goods, diplomats negotiated trade agreements, and travelers from 1,000 worlds mingled in the vast marketplace. The air recyclers worked overtime to accommodate the breathing requirements of dozens of species, creating a complex mixture of gases that somehow managed to keep everyone alive. Marcus Chen had never seen anything like it. At 12 years old, he pressed his face against the observation deck's transparent aluminum windows, watching ships dock and depart in the distance. His father, Ambassador David Chen, was somewhere in the diplomatic quarters negotiating humanity's first major trade agreement with the Galactic Consortium. Marcus had begged to come along, promising to stay out of trouble. The boy wandered through the market sections, his eyes wide with wonder. Tall, graceful Etherians with their translucent skin glided past, while stocky Morlac traders argued prices in their guttural language. Insectoid Chirathi clicked and buzzed as they examined precious metals, their compound eyes reflecting rainbow patterns. Marcus stopped at a food vendor run by a friendly Valkyrian, whose purple tentacles served steaming bowls of something that smelled amazing. The creature's universal translator rendered its speech in perfect English. "First time on a station, young human?" the vendor asked, noticing Marcus's obvious fascination. "Yes, sir. My dad's here on business. This place is incredible." The Valkyrian's tentacles curled in what Marcus had learned was their equivalent of a smile. "The galaxy is vast, little one. Your species has much to learn, but you show promise." As Marcus chatted with the vendor, he didn't notice the group of Kronar soldiers approaching. The Kronar were the consortium's military arm, tall humanoids with gray skin and overdeveloped musculature. Their society valued strength above all else, and they looked down on species they considered weak. The lead soldier, Captain Vorthak, stood nearly 8 feet tall. His uniform bore the insignia of the Kronar Elite Guard, and his 3 eyes surveyed the marketplace with barely concealed disdain. He had been assigned to station security, a duty he considered beneath his status as a warrior. "Look at this pathetic display," Vorthak muttered to his companions in the Kronar language. Merchants and diplomats, all weaklings hiding behind words instead of proving their worth in battle. His gaze fell on Marcus, still talking excitedly with the Valkyrian vendor. The sight of the human child triggered something in Vorthak's mind. Humans were newcomers to galactic society, their planet only recently discovered. In Kronar culture, new species had to prove their strength before earning respect. "A human whelp," Vorthak sneered. "I've heard about their kind. Weak, soft creatures from a backwater world. They think they can simply talk their way into the consortium without proving their worth." Marcus finally noticed the soldiers approaching and felt a chill run down his spine. He had been warned about different alien customs, but his father had assured him the station was safe. The Universal Peace Accords guaranteed protection for all civilians in neutral territory. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely, trying to step around the towering Kronar. His mother had always taught him to be respectful to adults, regardless of species. Vorthak blocked his path, looking down at the boy with contempt. "Where do you think you're going, soft skin? Your species hasn't earned the right to walk freely among warriors." The marketplace began to quiet as other beings noticed the confrontation. The Valkyrian vendor's tentacles writhed nervously, but like most civilians, he was reluctant to interfere with Kronar military personnel. Marcus felt his heart racing but tried to remain calm. "I'm sorry if I offended you. I was just exploring the station while my father conducts business." "Your father," Vorthak spat. Another weak human trying to buy respect with words and credits. In Kronar society, respect is earned through strength and combat. "Your kind disgusts me." The boy took a step back, genuinely frightened now. The other Kronar soldiers formed a semicircle, blocking any escape route. Marcus looked around desperately, but the other civilians seemed frozen, unwilling to challenge military authority. "Please, I don't want any trouble," Marcus said, his voice beginning to shake. Vorthak's expression grew even more contemptuous. "Trouble? You think this is trouble? Your entire species is trouble. Weak, cowardly, unworthy of sharing the galaxy with true warriors. Someone needs to teach you and your kind a lesson about your proper place." Without warning, Vorthak raised his massive boot and kicked Marcus in the chest. The force sent the 12-year-old flying backward, his small body hitting the metal deck with a sickening thud. Pain exploded through his ribs as he gasped for air. The wind completely knocked out of him, The marketplace erupted in shocked gasps and alien exclamations. The Valkyrian vendors' tentacles turned dark purple with distress, while several other species backed away in horror. Physical violence against children was forbidden by the Universal Peace Accords regardless of species. Marcus lay on the cold deck, struggling to breathe, tears streaming down his face. Vorthak stood over him, a satisfied expression on his alien features. "That's what happens to weak species who forget their place," the Kronar captain announced loudly. "Let this be a lesson to all humans who think they can." The sentence died in his throat. A shadow fell across the marketplace as someone approached. The temperature seemed to drop several degrees, and even the Kronar soldiers instinctively stepped back. Marcus, still gasping on the floor, managed to turn his head to see who was coming. The figure walking toward them didn't look particularly impressive at first glance. He was human, average height, maybe 40 years old, wearing simple civilian clothes. His dark hair was streaked with gray, and he moved with a casual stride that suggested he was just another trader or diplomat. But something in his eyes made every being in the marketplace take notice. They were the eyes of a predator, cold and calculating, filled with a dangerous intelligence that promised swift and terrible consequences. "That," the man said quietly, his voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent marketplace, "was a mistake." Vorthak turned to face this new threat, his confidence wavering slightly. He was still much larger than the human, still armed and armored, still backed by his fellow soldiers. But something about the man's calm demeanor sent warning signals through his warrior instincts. "Another soft human," Vorthak said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "Come to protect your weak offspring with more pathetic words?" The man knelt beside Marcus, checking the boy's injuries with gentle hands while never taking his eyes off the Kronar captain. His expression remained perfectly calm, but the air around him seemed to crackle with barely contained violence. "My name is Colonel James Mitchell," the man said softly, "and you just made the last mistake of your life." Colonel Mitchell's words hung in the air like a death sentence. The Kronar soldiers shifted uncomfortably, their hands moving instinctively toward their weapons. Vorthak's 3 eyes narrowed as he tried to assess this new threat. "A colonel." Vorthak laughed, though the sound was forced. "Of what army? Humans have no military presence in this sector. You're just another soft diplomat pretending to be something you're not." Mitchell remained kneeling beside Marcus, his hands checking for broken ribs with practiced efficiency. The boy was breathing easier now, though tears still streamed down his face. Mitchell's voice was gentle when he spoke to the child. "Easy there, son. You're going to be fine. Just stay still while I handle this." He stood slowly, his movements deliberate and controlled. The Kronar soldiers automatically raised their weapons, energy rifles humming to life. The civilians in the marketplace scattered, seeking cover behind vendor stalls and support pillars. "Threatening a Kronar military officer," Vorthak announced, his confidence returning at the sight of drawn weapons. "That's a capital offense under consortium law. Surrender now and your death will be quick." Mitchell's expression never changed. He looked at the energy rifles pointed at him with the same mild interest he might show a particularly unremarkable piece of furniture. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "You know what's interesting about the Kronar military doctrine?" Mitchell asked conversationally. "It's built entirely around the concept of overwhelming force. Bigger weapons, stronger armor, more soldiers. Very straightforward. Very predictable." Vorthak's confusion was evident. "What are you talking about, human?" "I'm talking about the fundamental difference between our species," Mitchell replied. "You see strength as something external, weapons, armor, numbers. But humans," he smiled, and there was nothing pleasant about it, "we understand that true strength comes from within." "Enough of this nonsense," Vorthak snarled. "Kill him." The Kronar soldiers fired simultaneously, their energy beams converging on where Mitchell stood. But the human was no longer there. He moved like liquid lightning, his body flowing between the deadly beams with an economy of motion that seemed impossible. Before the first soldier could adjust his aim, Mitchell was beside him. A simple twist of the rifle barrel, and the weapon was pointing at the ceiling. A sharp elbow to the throat, and the Kronar warrior was gasping on the deck, his windpipe crushed. The second soldier spun to track Mitchell's movement, but the human was already behind him. Mitchell's hand shot out, fingers rigid as steel, and struck a precise point on the alien's neck. The Kronar's nervous system short-circuited, and he collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. The third soldier managed to get off another shot, the energy beam scorching the air where Mitchell had been a microsecond earlier. The human rolled under the blast, came up in a crouch, and launched himself forward. His shoulder took the kroner in the midsection, and they both went down in a tangle of limbs. The alien tried to bring his rifle to bear, but Mitchell was too close, too fast. The human's hands moved in a blur, and suddenly the kroner was screaming as his weapon arm bent at an impossible angle. The rifle clattered away across the deck. In less than 10 seconds, 3 elite kroner soldiers lay broken and defeated. The marketplace was utterly silent except for their groans of pain and Marcus's quiet whimpering. Every eye was fixed on the human who stood calmly in the center of the carnage, not even breathing hard. Vorthak stared in shock. This wasn't possible. Humans were supposed to be weak, soft, unprepared for real combat. His intelligence briefings had said so. The kroner had fought dozens of species across the galaxy, and none had ever displayed this level of individual combat prowess. "What are you?" Vorthak whispered. Mitchell turned to face him, and the kroner captain saw something in those human eyes that made his warrior's blood freeze. It was the look of an apex predator, something that had evolved not just to survive, but to hunt and kill anything that threatened it. "I'm what happens when a species spends 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare," Mitchell said quietly. "I'm what happens when evolution produces a creature that can kill with its bare hands, think its way out of any trap, and never, ever give up when something it cares about is threatened." He took a step toward Vorthak, and the massive alien involuntarily stepped back. "You want to know what I am? I'm a human being, and you just hurt a child." Vorthak's hand moved to his sidearm, a heavy plasma pistol that could burn through armor plating. But even as his fingers closed around the grip, he knew it was already too late. Mitchell was moving again, and this time there was no pretense of restraint. The human's advance was terrifying in its simplicity. No wasted motion, no unnecessary flourishes, just pure focused lethality. Vorthak managed to clear his weapon from its holster, but Mitchell's hand was already there, twisting the kroner's wrist until bones snapped. The plasma pistol fell to the deck as Vorthak screamed. Mitchell's other hand shot out, grasping the alien by the throat. For a moment, the two beings stood locked together. The massive kroner warrior held fast by a human who seemed almost small in comparison. "You kicked a child," Mitchell said, his voice barely above a whisper. "An innocent boy who was doing nothing but exploring and learning. In my species culture, that makes you something we have a very specific word for." Vorthak tried to speak, but Mitchell's grip was like an iron vice around his throat. "The word is dead," Mitchell finished. The human's free hand moved with surgical precision, striking nerve clusters and pressure points that Vorthak didn't even know existed. The kroner captain felt his body betraying him, his legendary strength draining away like water through a broken dam. But Mitchell wasn't finished. As Vorthak's vision began to blur, the human leaned in close, his voice cutting through the alien's fading consciousness like a blade. "And just so we're clear about the pecking order in this galaxy," Mitchell whispered, "what you're experiencing right now, this is what we call showing restraint. Because if I really wanted to hurt you, you'd already be dead." The watching alien saw the massive kroner warrior, elite soldier of the galaxy's most feared military force, crumple to the deck like a broken toy. Mitchell stood over him, calm and composed, as if he had simply swatted an annoying insect. The silence stretched on for long moments before Mitchell turned back to Marcus, his expression immediately softening with concern. The transformation was startling. One moment a terrifying engine of destruction, the next a caring adult worried about an injured child. "How are you feeling, son?" he asked gently, kneeling beside the boy again. Marcus looked up at him with wide eyes, still trying to process what he had witnessed. "Are you really a colonel?" Mitchell smiled, and this time it was warm and genuine. "Among other things, let's get you to the medical bay and make sure you're okay. Your father is going to be very worried." As he helped Marcus to his feet, the other beings in the marketplace began to whisper among themselves. Word of what had happened would spread quickly through the station, and from there across the galaxy. The message would be clear. Humanity was not the weak, soft species everyone had assumed. They were something far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The medical bay of Zerion Station was a marvel of galactic technology, designed to treat injuries from dozens of different species. Dr. Yixith, a skilled Etherian physician with translucent blue skin, ran her scanning devices over Marcus while maintaining a steady stream of concerned chatter. Bruised ribs, minor respiratory trauma but no permanent damage, and she announced, her voice carrying the musical quality common to her species. The young human will recover completely within a few days. Ambassador David Chen sat beside his son's medical bed, his diplomatic composure cracking to reveal the worried father beneath. His hands shook slightly as he smoothed Marcus's hair, and his voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. I should never have let you wander off alone, he murmured. The consortium assured us the station was safe for civilians. It is safe, Colonel Mitchell said from his position near the door. For civilians who understand that safety sometimes requires enforcement. The ambassador looked up at the man who had saved his son, confusion evident in his expression. I don't understand. My briefings indicated that humans had no military presence in this sector. Who exactly are you, Colonel? Mitchell exchanged a meaningful glance with Dr. Yixith, who quietly excused herself to give them privacy. When they were alone, the colonel moved closer to Marcus's bed, his expression serious but not unkind. David, isn't it? I've been following your negotiations with the consortium. You're doing good work, trying to establish peaceful trade relationships for Earth. That doesn't answer my question, Chen replied firmly. If you're really a colonel, what military are you with? And how did you handle those Kronar soldiers so easily? Mitchell sat down heavily in one of the medical bay's chairs, suddenly looking older than his apparent 40 years. The military I serve doesn't officially exist, David, at least not in any public records that the consortium has access to. Marcus, despite his injuries, was listening intently. The events in the marketplace had changed something fundamental in his understanding of the universe, and he sensed that what the colonel was about to say would change it even more. 3 years ago, Mitchell continued, Earth's deep space monitoring stations detected something troubling. Radio transmissions from this sector, specifically from Kronar military channels. They were discussing something called Project Harvest. The ambassador's face paled. Harvest? A systematic evaluation of newly discovered species to determine their potential as slave labor or military conscripts. The Kronar have done this before, David. The consortium presents a peaceful face to new civilizations, but behind the scenes, the Kronar military is already planning how to exploit them. Mitchell stood and walked to the medical bay's small viewport, gazing out at the stars beyond. Earth's governments made a decision that day. Publicly, we would pursue diplomatic contact through people like you, but privately we would prepare for the possibility that diplomacy might not be enough. The Shadow Fleet, David whispered, pieces falling into place. The rumors in the intelligence community, ships that don't appear on any official manifests, personnel with no documented history. Not just ships, Mitchell corrected, an entire parallel military structure designed to operate in deep space without consortium knowledge. We've been out here for 2 years, David. Learning, watching, preparing. Marcus found his voice, though it was still weak from his injuries. How many of you are there? Mitchell turned back to the boy, his expression softening. Enough, son. More than enough. A soft chime indicated someone requesting entry to the medical bay. Dr. Yixith's voice came through the communication system, tinged with nervousness. Colonel Mitchell, there are several high-ranking consortium officials here to see you. They seem quite urgent. Show them in, Doctor. The door slid open to admit a group of beings that represented the political elite of galactic civilization, Ambassador Throlix of the Zephyrian Empire, his crystalline form refracting the medical bay's lights into rainbow patterns. High Counselor Varric of the Morlac Trade Federation, his massive frame barely fitting through the doorway. And most importantly, Consortium Admiral Zarian himself, the Kronar military leader for whom the station was named. Admiral Zarian was even larger than Captain Vorthak had been, his gray skin bearing the ritual scars of countless battles. His 3 eyes fixed on Mitchell with a mixture of respect and wariness that would have been unthinkable an hour earlier. Colonel, the Admiral said, his voice carefully neutral, we need to talk. I assume this is about the incident in the marketplace, Mitchell replied calmly. I was defending a child from an unprovoked attack. The Universal Peace Accords are quite clear about the protection of civilians. Ambassador Throlix's crystalline body chimed softly as he spoke. The legal aspects are not in question, Colonel. Captain Vorthak clearly violated protocol by attacking the young human. What concerns us is how easily you defeated 4 elite Kronar soldiers. 3 soldiers and 1 captain, Mitchell corrected. And it wasn't easy. It was simple. There's a difference. Admiral Zarian stepped forward and Marcus could see the barely controlled aggression in the alien's posture.
My intelligence reports indicated that humans had no significant military capabilities.
No advanced weapons, no combat experience beyond primitive planetary conflicts. How do you explain what happened? Mitchell smiled, and every being in the room felt a chill run down their spines. Admiral, your intelligence reports were incomplete. They told you about our technology, our industrial capacity, our population centers, but they didn't tell you the most important thing about humanity, which is, we've been fighting each other for our entire recorded history. Every advancement we've made, every innovation we've created has been tested in the crucible of war. We've perfected the art of violence in ways that most galactic species abandoned millennia ago. High Counselor Verak's voice rumbled like distant thunder. You're suggesting that humans are a warrior species? That contradicts everything we've observed about your civilization. No, David Chen interjected, understanding dawning in his voice. We're not a warrior species. We're something much worse. All eyes turned to the ambassador, who looked pale but determined to speak the truth. We're a survivor species, Chen continued. Every other intelligent race in the galaxy developed spaceflight because they mastered cooperation within their species. Humans developed spaceflight because we needed to escape the wars we kept fighting with each other. Mitchell nodded approvingly. David understands. You see, Admiral, most species achieve galactic civilization because they've learned to live in peace. Humans achieved it despite never learning to live in peace. We brought our capacity for violence with us to the stars. The silence in the medical bay was deafening. Marcus watched the alien officials absorb this information, seeing their worldview shift in real time. How many others are there like you? Admiral Zarian asked finally. Like me personally? About 50,000. Like humans in general? Mitchell's smile widened. 8 billion and counting. Ambassador Throlix's form chimed discordantly. This changes everything. The consortium's entire strategic assessment of humanity will need to be revised. Yes, Mitchell agreed. It will. And I suggest you start that revision by ensuring that incidents like today never happen again. Because the next human you encounter might not show the restraint I did. Admiral Zarian's 3 eyes narrowed. Is that a threat, Colonel? It's a promise, Admiral. Hurt our children, and you'll discover exactly what 8 billion angry humans are capable of. The Consortium High Council chambers on the capital world of Nexus Prime had never hosted a more tense gathering. Representatives from every major galactic civilization sat in their species-specific environmental pods, the air thick with nervous energy, and the hum of universal translators working overtime. Admiral Zarian stood at the central podium, his massive frame dwarfed by the holographic displays showing tactical assessments and threat projections. The data painted a picture that shattered every assumption the consortium had made about humanity. The human presence in our space is far more extensive than previously believed, the Admiral reported, his 3 eyes scanning the assembled delegates. Our investigation following the Zarian station incident has revealed at least 200 human vessels operating in this sector alone. High Chancellor Vexthera of the Consortium, Council leaned forward in her environmental pod, her amphibious features glistening under the chamber's lights. 200 ships? Our intelligence indicated that Earth barely had the capability to send a single diplomatic mission. Our intelligence was wrong, Admiral Zarian admitted. The words clearly difficult for the proud Kronar to speak. These ships are not primitive exploration vessels. They are warships, advanced beyond anything in our current fleet assessments. The holographic display shifted to show scanner readings from the human vessels. Elegant, predatory designs that seemed to incorporate technologies the Consortium had never seen before. Weapon signatures that defied conventional understanding. Defensive capabilities that approached theoretical limits. Ambassador Kaleth of the hegemony world spoke from his crystalline pod, his voice carrying harmonic frequencies that made the chamber resonate. How is this possible? Our monitoring of Earth showed a civilization barely capable of interplanetary travel. A new voice cut through the chamber's confusion. Because you were watching the wrong things. Every eye turned to the observation gallery, where Colonel Mitchell sat with calm authority. Beside him, Ambassador Chen looked distinctly uncomfortable with the attention. while young Marcus peered down at the assembled alien dignitaries with wide-eyed fascination. Colonel Mitchell, High Chancellor Vexithara said, her voice carefully neutral, "Thank you for accepting our invitation to address the Council. Perhaps you can clarify these discrepancies in our intelligence." Mitchell stood and activated his own holographic display, showing images of Earth that the consortium had never seen before. Hidden shipyards and asteroid belts, training facilities on the dark sides of moons, massive industrial complexes disguised as research stations. Your surveillance focused on our major population centers, our public space programs, our diplomatic communications. Mitchell explained. You saw what we wanted you to see. Meanwhile, Earth's military-industrial complex was working around the clock to prepare for contact with galactic civilization. The display shifted to show timeline data that made several delegates gasp in shock. The scale of human preparation was staggering. "You've been planning this for decades," Admiral Zarion said, his voice a mix of respect and concern. "Since the 1950s, Mitchell confirmed, the moment our radio telescopes detected organized galactic communications. Earth's governments began preparing for the possibility that first contact might not be peaceful." High Counselor Varek's massive form shifted in his reinforced pod. "The consortium approaches all new civilizations with peaceful intent. The Universal Peace Accords guarantee. The Universal Peace Accords are worth exactly as much as the force available to enforce them," Mitchell interrupted. "And your own Captain Vorthak demonstrated just how much those guarantees are worth when he attacked a 12-year-old boy." Marcus shifted uncomfortably at being the center of attention, but Mitchell placed a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "That incident," the colonel continued, "was a perfect example of why humanity takes a different approach to galactic relations. We prepare for the worst while hoping for the best." Chancellor Vex Thera's amphibious features wrinkled in concentration. "What exactly are you prepared for, Colonel?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Mitchell's expression grew deadly serious as he considered his response. "Everything," he said finally. "We're prepared for peaceful trade and cultural exchange. We're prepared for economic competition. We're prepared for territorial disputes. And yes, we're prepared for war." The chamber erupted in alarmed chittering, clicking, and vocalizations from a dozen different species. The concept of a newly contacted civilization being prepared for large-scale conflict was unprecedented in consortium history. Admiral Zarion's voice cut through the noise. "Colonel, surely you understand that the consortium's military might far exceeds anything a single world could produce. We have fleets numbering in the thousands of ships, armies spanning multiple star systems. And every one of those fleets follows predictable tactical doctrines," Mitchell replied calmly. "Every one of those armies relies on technologies we've been studying for years. Admiral, the consortium has been at peace for so long that you've forgotten how to fight a real war." He activated another holographic display, this one showing detailed tactical analyses of every major consortium military engagement in the past century. The patterns were obvious once pointed out. Standardized formations, predictable strategies, and over-reliance on technological superiority. "Humans have never stopped fighting," Mitchell continued. "While your species were learning cooperation and diplomacy, we were perfecting the art of destruction. Every conflict we've ever had has taught us something new about warfare. We've been at war with ourselves for so long that fighting has become our greatest skill." Marcus, despite his youth, understood the implications of what Colonel Mitchell was saying. His father's diplomatic mission was just one part of a much larger strategy, and humanity was playing a game that the consortium didn't even realize had begun. Ambassador Kaleth's harmonic voice filled the chamber. "Are you threatening the consortium, Colonel?" "I'm explaining reality," Mitchell replied. "Humanity wants peace. We want trade, cultural exchange, scientific collaboration, but we will not be bullied, exploited, or treated as inferiors by beings who think their technology makes them invincible." He gestured toward Marcus, and his voice took on a harder edge. "When one of your soldiers attacks our children, we respond. When your military makes plans to harvest our people as slaves, we respond. When anyone threatens Earth or humanity's interests, we respond." The chamber fell silent as the implication sank in. The consortium had encountered numerous species over the millennia, some peaceful, some aggressive, some technologically advanced, some primitive. But they had never encountered a species that had spent its entire existence preparing for war while simultaneously pursuing peace. High Chancellor Vex Thara spoke carefully. "What are you proposing, Colonel?" "A new understanding," Mitchell replied. "Humanity will honor the Universal Peace Accords and respect consortium law, provided the consortium respects humanity's sovereignty and protects our citizens as promised. We will contribute to galactic civilization through trade, technology, and cultural exchange. And if someone violates that understanding," Mitchell's smile was cold as winter space, "then they'll discover why natural selection produced a species capable of splitting atoms, traveling between stars and killing efficiently with nothing but their bare hands." He paused, letting that sink in before continuing in a softer tone. "But it doesn't have to come to that. Marcus here represents what humanity hopes to become: explorers, learners, builders of bridges between species. The choice of which version of humanity you encounter is entirely up to you." Admiral Zerion studied the human colonel for a long moment before speaking. "And Captain Vorthak? What happens to him?" "He's learned his lesson," Mitchell replied, "though I suspect he'll be spending quite some time in your medical facilities. Consider it a very expensive education in the consequences of breaking your own laws." The silence stretched on as the assembled delegates absorbed this new reality. Earth was not the primitive, defenseless world they had assumed. Humanity was not the weak, cooperative species they had expected. The galaxy had just become a much more interesting and dangerous place. But perhaps, Marcus thought as he watched the alien leaders grapple with this new understanding, it had also become a place where a human boy could explore the marketplace without fear of being kicked by a bully. 6 months after the incident at Zarian Station, the galaxy was a very different place. News of humanity's hidden military capabilities had spread through every civilized system, creating ripple effects that no one had anticipated. Marcus Chen stood on the observation deck of the Earth Embassy on Nexus Prime, watching the constant stream of ships arriving and departing from the capital world's orbital platforms. His ribs had healed completely, but the experience had left deeper marks. The 12-year-old who had wandered innocently through an alien marketplace was gone, replaced by someone who understood that the universe was far more complex and dangerous than he had imagined. "Quite a view," Colonel Mitchell said, joining him at the transparisteel windows. The officer looked tired but satisfied, wearing the dress uniform of what was now officially known as the Terran Deep Space Command. "It's different now," Marcus observed. "The way they look at the human ships. The way they talk to Dad during the negotiations. Fear and respect often look the same from the outside," Mitchell agreed. "The trick is making sure they remember the respect part more than the fear part." Below them, Ambassador Chen was hosting another diplomatic reception, this one for trade representatives from the hegemony worlds. Through the embassy's internal sensors, they could see the carefully choreographed dance of galactic politics playing out in real time. "Your father's doing good work," Mitchell continued. "The new trade agreements will benefit both Earth and our new partners. It turns out that cooperation works much better when everyone knows the cost of non-cooperation." Marcus nodded, but his attention was caught by a new arrival at the reception. A tall, elegant Etherian female was greeting his father with what appeared to be genuine warmth. Her translucent skin shimmed with pleased colors as they spoke. "That's Dr. Yixith," Marcus said, "the physician who treated me at Zarian Station. And now the head of the new consortium medical exchange program," Mitchell added. "Turns out that species are much more willing to share advanced medical technology when they want to stay on your good side." The changes had been remarkable to witness. Where once the consortium had offered humanity basic trade partnerships and junior membership status, they now competed fiercely for human attention and favor. Earth's technological innovations, once dismissed as primitive, were suddenly highly sought after. Human military advisors were quietly being recruited by several member species. "Colonel?" Marcus asked, his voice thoughtful. "Was it worth it? What happened to Captain Vorthak, I mean? Ted says some people think we went too far." Mitchell considered the question seriously. "Marcus, do you remember what you felt when that Kronar kicked you?" "Scared, hurt, confused about why he would do that to someone he'd never met." "And now, when you walk through stations and embassy functions, how do you feel?" Marcus thought about it. "Safe, respected, like I belong here as much as anyone else." "That's your answer," Mitchell said. "The galaxy is full of species who learned to cooperate through necessity, through environmental pressure, through natural evolution. But cooperation born from weakness doesn't last when someone stronger comes along." He gestured toward the diplomatic reception below. What you're seeing down there is cooperation born from mutual respect. Everyone involved knows that aggression has consequences, so they choose diplomacy instead. That's a much more stable foundation for peace. A soft chime indicated an incoming priority communication. Mitchell activated his personal communicator, frowning slightly at the urgent classification codes. Colonel Mitchell here. Sir, this is Commander Torres aboard the TDS Retribution. We have a situation developing in the Kalos system. A Kronar battle group has surrounded a civilian transport carrying human colonists. They're demanding immediate surrender under some obscure military regulation. Mitchell's expression hardened instantly. How many ships in the battle group? 12 heavy cruisers, sir. The transport is the civilian vessel New Horizon, with approximately 3,000 colonists aboard. And how many ships do we have in that system? Just the Retribution, sir. We're significantly outgunned. Marcus watched the colonel's face transform. Gone was the diplomatic advisor, replaced by the predatory soldier who had destroyed Captain Vorthak's career, and possibly his spine. When Mitchell spoke again, his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to life and death decisions. Torres, transmit the following message to the Kronar Battle Group Commander. This is Colonel James Mitchell of the Terran Deep Space Command. You have 60 seconds to withdraw from the Kalos system before I consider your actions an act of war against humanity. Choose wisely. Sir, with respect, we're one ship against 12. Shouldn't we call for reinforcements first? Commander, how long have you been serving with the Deep Space Command? 18 months, sir. Then you should know that one human ship is more than enough for 12 Kronar cruisers. Transmit the message. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The casual confidence in Mitchell's voice suggested that this wasn't bravado or bluffing. Somehow one human warship really was considered sufficient to handle 12 alien cruisers. What happens now? Marcus asked quietly. Now we find out if the Kronar learned their lesson or if they need another education in human capabilities. The communication channel crackled to life again. Colonel, this is the Kronar Battle Group Commander Admiral Thexvor. Your threats are meaningless. One primitive human ship cannot stand against the might of the Kronar fleet. Mitchell sighed deeply. Some people never learn. Torres, you are authorized to engage. Show them why human ships don't carry thousands of crew members like theirs do. Aye, sir. Engaging the enemy. The next few minutes were filled with tense silence as they waited for reports from the battle. Marcus found himself gripping the edge of the observation window, his knuckles white with tension. Finally, Commander Torres's voice returned, sounding almost bored. Colonel, all 12 Kronar vessels have been disabled. No human casualties. The civilian transport is free to continue to its destination. Disabled, not destroyed. Per standing orders, sir. We targeted their propulsion and weapon systems only. They'll be able to limp home once they effect repairs. Excellent work, Commander. Make sure the New Horizon reaches its destination safely, then return to patrol duties. Mitchell closed the communication channel and turned back to Marcus, his expression once again calm and reasonable. That, he said quietly, is why diplomacy works so much better now. Every species in the galaxy knows that challenging humanity has consequences. Most of them are smart enough to choose cooperation instead. Marcus stared at him in amazement. How is one ship enough against 12? Because human military doctrine is built around making every individual unit as capable as possible. We don't win through numbers, Marcus. We win through superior technology, better training, and more importantly, better tactical thinking. But surely the aliens have good technology too, Mitchell smiled. They have adequate technology, but they've been at peace for so long that they've forgotten how to innovate for war. Human technology develops through constant conflict and competition. Every system on our ships has been tested in battle, refined through trial and error, perfected through necessity. And they don't have that. They have committee-designed equipment built to standardized specifications across multiple species. We have weapons and defenses designed by the same people who have to use them in combat. There's a difference. Marcus looked down at the diplomatic reception, where his father was still entertaining alien dignitaries with apparent ease. The contrast between the social gathering below and the brief but decisive battle they had just monitored was striking. Dad doesn't know about the battle, does he? He doesn't need to, Mitchell replied. His job is to build the peaceful relationships that make battles unnecessary. My job is to ensure that when battles do become necessary, they end quickly and in humanity's favor. And my job? Mitchell looked at the young man seriously. Your job, Marcus, is to grow up into the kind of human being that makes the galaxy a better place for everyone. Someone who understands both the importance of cooperation and the necessity of strength. As if on cue, Ambassador Chen's voice came over the embassy's internal communication system. Marcus, could you join us in the reception hall? There are some people here who would like to meet the young man who started this whole diplomatic revolution. Marcus looked at Mitchell questioningly. Go ahead, the colonel said. Just remember, you represent not just humanity, but the idea that peaceful species can be strong species. Make us proud. As Marcus headed toward the reception, he reflected on how much his world had changed since that day in the marketplace. The galaxy was still vast and full of wonders, but now he walked through it as an equal, not a victim. And somewhere in the Kalos system, 3,000 human colonists were continuing their journey to a new world, safe in the knowledge that threatening humanity had consequences that most beings preferred to avoid. 2 years had passed since the incident at Zerion Station, and the Galactic Consortium was experiencing growing pains. The comfortable certainties of 1,000 years of peaceful expansion had been shattered by humanity's arrival, and not everyone was adapting well to the new reality. Marcus Chen, now 14 and considerably taller than the boy who had been kicked by Captain Vorthak, sat in the secure briefing room aboard the TDS Determination. The Terran Deep Space Command's newest flagship was a marvel of human engineering, its sleek hull incorporating technologies that had sent shockwaves through consortium military circles. Tell me what you see, Colonel Mitchell said, activating a holographic display that showed the current political situation across known space. Marcus studied the data carefully. His father's diplomatic training had rubbed off on him, and 2 years of exposure to galactic politics had given him insights that most adults never achieved. The consortium is fracturing, he said finally. The older, more established species are adapting to humanity's presence and finding ways to benefit from it. But the newer member species, the ones who were still trying to prove themselves, they're becoming more aggressive. Excellent analysis, Mitchell confirmed. And what does that mean for human interests? It means we're going to have more incidents like the Kalos system. Species that think they can improve their standing by challenging us directly. The holographic display shifted to show real-time intelligence reports from across the galaxy, human merchant vessels being harassed by Zephyrian patrol ships, diplomatic pouches being accidentally lost by Morlac transport services, mining claims being disputed by species who had never shown interest in those systems before. The problem, Mitchell explained, is that some species see humanity's success as a zero-sum game. They believe that our rise in status must come at their expense. Are they right? In some cases, yes. The galaxy's resources and trade routes aren't infinite, but they're making the mistake of thinking that conflict is their only option. Ambassador Chen's voice came through the ship's communication system. James, Marcus, could you join me in the forward conference room? We have visitors. Marcus followed Mitchell through the ship's corridors, noting the differences between human design philosophy and what he had seen on consortium vessels. Where alien ships favored grand spaces and decorative elements, human ships were built for efficiency and functionality. Every surface served a purpose. Every system was designed for rapid repair or replacement. The conference room contained a sight that would have been impossible 2 years earlier. Admiral Zerion, the massive Kronar who had once commanded Zerion Station, sat across from Ambassador Chen with what appeared to be genuine respect. Beside him sat Captain Vorthak, walking with a permanent limp and bearing scars that spoke of extensive reconstructive surgery. Ah, Marcus, Admiral Zerion said, his universal translator rendering his words in perfect English. The young human whose experience started this whole revolution. How are you feeling? Much better than the last time we met, Marcus replied diplomatically, though he couldn't help noticing how Captain Vorthak avoided making eye contact. Indeed, the Admiral chuckled, a sound that seemed odd coming from such a massive warrior. And you, Colonel Mitchell, are looking well. My medical staff assures me that Captain Vorthak has learned valuable lessons from your encounter. Mitchell nodded politely. I hope the captain's recovery has been complete. Vorthak finally spoke, his voice subdued compared to the arrogant bully Marcus remembered. Colonel, I owe you an apology. And more importantly, I owe young Marcus an apology. My actions were inexcusable under any military code. Apology accepted, Marcus said simply. But I have to ask, why are you here? Admiral Zarian activated his own holographic display, showing military disposition charts that made Marcus's eyes widen. Because the galaxy is about to become a much more dangerous place, and the Kronar Republic has decided that we would prefer to face that danger alongside humanity, rather than in opposition to it. The display showed massive fleet movements throughout the Outer Rim territories. Species that had never coordinated before were suddenly working together, pooling their resources and military assets. The Hegemony Coalition, Ambassador Chen explained grimly. 17 species that have decided humanity represents an existential threat to galactic stability. They're planning a coordinated attack on human colonies and trade routes. Marcus felt his blood run cold. How many ships? Conservative estimates put it at over 3,000 vessels, Admiral Zarian replied. They believe that if they can deliver a decisive blow against human interests, the consortium will be forced to expel humanity from galactic civilization. And what do we have to defend against that? Marcus asked. Mitchell's expression was grim but determined. Currently, about 200 ships in the Deep Space Command, plus whatever support we can get from friendly consortium members. That's impossible odds, Marcus said, the mathematics clear in his head. That's what they're counting on, his father agreed. But they're making the same mistake that everyone makes when they first encounter humanity. They're thinking in terms of traditional warfare. Admiral Zarian leaned forward, his three eyes focusing intently on Marcus. Young human, do you understand why Captain Vorthak and I are here? Marcus thought about it carefully. Because you've realized that if the Coalition succeeds in destroying humanity, you'll be next. They won't stop with us. Precisely. The Coalition's real goal isn't to eliminate humanity. It's to overthrow the current consortium power structure and replace it with their own hierarchy, one where military strength determines status and cooperation is seen as weakness. Captain Vorthak spoke again, his voice carrying bitter experience. I have seen what humans are capable of in individual combat. But more importantly, I have learned to recognize the strategic thinking that makes such capabilities possible. These Coalition species do not understand what they are about to face. Mitchell activated another display, this one showing detailed tactical assessments. The Coalition is planning a conventional military campaign. Mass fleet movements, coordinated assaults on fixed positions, territorial occupation, everything by the book. And humanity doesn't fight by the book, Marcus said, understanding dawning. Humans wrote several different books, his father corrected, and then we threw them away and wrote new ones. The Coalition is about to discover why our military doctrine emphasizes adaptability over standardization. Admiral Zarian's scarred features showed what might have been a smile, which brings us to our proposal. The Kronar Republic wishes to offer formal military alliance with humanity. Our fleets under human strategic command. That's a significant offer, Ambassador Chen said carefully. What do you want in return? Survival, Vorthak said bluntly. And the chance to learn from a species that has mastered warfare in ways we never imagined. Marcus looked around the room at the assembled beings, human and alien, former enemies now united by necessity. When does it start? The Coalition is massing at Rally Point Epsilon in the Outer Veil, Mitchell replied. Intelligence suggests they'll begin their offensive within days. The question is whether we wait for them to attack, or whether we remind the galaxy what happens when humans decide to end a conflict quickly. Admiral Zarian's three eyes gleamed with something that might have been anticipation. Colonel, in my species' long military history, we have never had the opportunity to observe human fleet tactics in large-scale combat. You may get that chance sooner than you think, Mitchell replied grimly. Marcus felt the weight of history settling around him. The innocent 12-year-old who had wandered through a marketplace was gone forever, replaced by someone who understood that sometimes peace could only be preserved through the credible threat of overwhelming violence. What can I do to help? He asked. You can continue being exactly what you are, his father replied. A reminder of what we're fighting to protect, the right of human children to explore the galaxy without fear, to learn and grow and build bridges between species. And if the Coalition succeeds, Mitchell's expression was colder than interstellar space. Then they'll discover that threatening human children was the last mistake their civilizations ever made. The conference room fell silent as the implications sank in. Outside the ship's viewports, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, beautiful and eternal. But Marcus knew that some of those stars were about to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humanity stopped holding back. The Battle of Rally Point Epsilon lasted exactly 17 minutes. Marcus, Chen watched from the observation deck of the TDS Determination as the largest fleet engagement in galactic history unfolded in the space around them. What should have been a desperate struggle for humanity's survival instead became a demonstration of why Earth's species had survived 10,000 years of continuous warfare. "Contact in 30 seconds, came the calm voice of Commander Torres over the ship's communication system. "All units report ready for engagement." The human fleet numbered only 212 ships, supplemented by 87 Kronar vessels under Admiral Zarian's command. Arrayed against them were over 3,000 ships from the Hegemony Coalition, representing 17 different species and military doctrines. "They're beautiful," Marcus said quietly, watching the Coalition fleet's approach formation. The alien vessels moved in perfect geometric patterns, their hulls gleaming with energy shields and weapon arrays. "They are," Colonel Mitchell agreed from beside him, "and they're about to discover that beauty and effectiveness are two very different things." The Coalition had planned their attack with meticulous precision. Mass formation flying, coordinated weapon strikes, overwhelming firepower brought to bear on specific targets. It was everything that military textbooks across the galaxy recommended for fleet combat. "All units, this is Admiral Chen," came Ambassador Chen's voice. Marcus still couldn't get used to his father's temporary military rank. "You are authorized to engage at will. Remember, we're not here to destroy civilizations. We're here to end a war before it begins." The human response was nothing like what the Coalition expected. Instead of matching their formation flying, the human ships scattered like a school of fish, each vessel moving independently while somehow maintaining perfect coordination. Where the Coalition concentrated their firepower, they found empty space. Where they spread their defenses, human ships appeared with devastating precision. "How are they doing that?" Marcus asked, watching as apparently isolated human vessels worked together with mechanical precision. "Networked AI coordination," Mitchell explained. "Every human ship shares tactical data in real time. Our captains don't need to follow rigid formations, because their computers are constantly calculating optimal positioning for the entire fleet." The Coalition's first volley was a spectacular display of synchronized firepower that lit up the void with enough energy to vaporize a small moon. But their carefully planned target zones were empty, the human ships having moved to new positions faster than the aliens could track. The human counterattack was surgical in its precision. Where Coalition ships had grouped together for mutual support, human vessels appeared to target their command and control systems. Where alien fleets had spread out for coverage, concentrated human firepower disabled key vessels to create gaps in their formation. "Enemy flagship is withdrawing," reported Torres. "Multiple Coalition vessels are requesting surrender terms." "Already?" Marcus asked in disbelief. "Think about it from their perspective," Mitchell said. "They planned for a conventional battle of attrition. Instead, they're facing an enemy that seems to know their every move before they make it. Strikes where they're weakest and vanishes before they can respond." Admiral Zarian's voice came through the communication system, and Marcus could hear the awe in the Kronar warrior's tone. "Human Command, this is Zarian. My tactical officers are requesting permission to study your combat recordings. We have never seen fleet coordination of this sophistication." "Permission granted, Admiral," Ambassador Chen replied. "Consider it part of our Alliance education program." On the main display, Marcus watched as Coalition ships began powering down their weapons and dropping their shields in surrender. Some vessels were already transmitting formal ceasefire requests. Others were simply withdrawing from the battle zone as quickly as their engines could carry them. 17 minutes, Mitchell said, checking his chronometer. "A new record for ending a galactic war." "It's over?" Marcus asked. "The shooting is over." His father's voice came through the ship's communication system. "Now comes the harder part, building a peace that lasts." The aftermath of the Battle of Rally Point Epsilon reverberated throughout the galaxy with unprecedented speed. By the time the human fleet returned to consortium space, delegations from every Coalition species were already requesting formal meetings to discuss terms. 3 weeks later, Marcus found himself once again on Nexus Prime, but this time as an honored guest at what was being called the most important diplomatic conference in galactic history. The Grand Assembly Hall had been expanded to accommodate representatives from every known species, and the air hummed with dozens of different languages being processed by universal translators. The Terran proposal is simple, Ambassador Chen announced from the central podium. Full recognition of human sovereignty within consortium space, with guaranteed protection for human civilians and colonies. In exchange, Earth offers technological and military cooperation to all species willing to honor the Universal Peace Accords. Marcus sat in the human delegations section, watching alien faces process this offer. Some showed relief, others calculation. A few displayed what might have been residual hostility. Representative Kithvar of the Hegemony Coalition spoke first, her insectoid features rigid with barely controlled anger. The Terran military displayed capabilities that were deliberately concealed during first contact negotiations. How can the consortium trust a species that practices such deception? With respect, Colonel Mitchell replied from his position as military advisor. Humanity never concealed our capabilities. We simply didn't advertise them. There's a difference between deception and discretion. The distinction seems irrelevant, Kithvar continued. Your species has demonstrated the ability to decisively defeat any combination of consortium forces. What prevents you from simply taking whatever you want through force? Marcus found himself standing before he realized he had made the decision to speak. The hall fell silent as every eye turned to the 14-year-old human who had started this entire chain of events. Because, Marcus said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems, we know what it feels like to be kicked when you're defenseless. He looked directly at Captain Vorthak, who sat with the Kronar delegation. The scarred warrior nodded almost imperceptibly. 2 years ago, I was just a kid exploring a marketplace. I wasn't threatening anyone, wasn't trying to prove anything, wasn't looking for a fight. I was just existing in a space where I had every right to be. And someone decided that was enough reason to hurt me. The hall remained silent, but Marcus could see alien delegates shifting uncomfortably. Humans understand what it means to be vulnerable. We've spent our entire history being vulnerable to each other, to our environment, to forces beyond our control. We developed our strength not to dominate others, but to protect ourselves and the people we care about. Representative Kithvar's compound eyes focused on him intently. And what happens when human interests conflict with those of other species? Then we negotiate, Marcus replied simply. We find compromises. We build solutions that work for everyone, but we do it from a position of equality, not from a position of weakness. Ambassador Throlix of the Zephyrian Empire spoke from his crystalline environmental pod. Young human, your species' military capabilities suggest that such negotiations would be conducted under the implicit threat of force. All negotiations are conducted under the implicit threat of force. Admiral Zarian interjected, surprising many delegates. The difference is whether that force belongs to law-abiding species committed to galactic peace, or to those who would exploit weakness whenever they find it. Marcus nodded gratefully to the Kronar admiral. That's exactly right. The galaxy is safer when peaceful species are strong enough to deter aggression. Captain Vorthak kicked me because he thought there would be no consequences. The Coalition attacked humanity because they thought we were too weak to defend ourselves. Both times they were wrong. High Chancellor Vexithera leaned forward in her amphibious environmental pod. Marcus Chen, what do you see as humanity's role in galactic civilization going forward? Marcus considered the question carefully. I see us as partners, contributors. Protectors when protection is needed, builders when construction is required, learners when there's knowledge to be gained. But most importantly, I see us as equals. Equals who happen to possess overwhelming military superiority. Representative Kithvar observed pointedly. Equals who have earned the right to be treated with respect, Marcus corrected. Just like every other species in this hall. The difference is that we've demonstrated we can enforce that respect when necessary. The debate continued for hours, but Marcus could see the tide turning. Species after species stood to offer support for the human proposal. Some were motivated by fear, others by genuine respect, still others by the practical advantages of alliance with Earth. When the final vote was tallied, the result was overwhelming. 847 species in favor of the Terran Accords, 23 abstentions and only 6 opposed. As the delegates filed out of the Grand Assembly Hall, Captain Vorthak approached Marcus. The Kronar's massive frame cast a shadow over the young human, but there was no threat in his posture. Young,